God is good. Well, great to see you all here. And 13th of November 2016. There'll never again be a day just like this one. 7 weeks until Christmas. 6 weeks till Christmas. So I got it wrong. I did the maths and I did the addition right, but I did the multiplication wrong. 42 days, that's 6 weeks. How many people have finished their Christmas shopping? How many people have started their Christmas shopping? How many people are like me that hope the rapture occurs in 41 days? 6 weeks to Christmas. Wow. That means there's 7 weeks until the new year, 2017. How time flies when you're having fun. I was thinking about, as I was reading during the week, and I was thinking, I've started reading the Gospel of Mark. And as I was reading that, something jumped out at me, just a little phrase. And I want to talk this morning about distractions, things that will distract. And I love the story of Samson. Samson's one of my heroes. I reckon Samson's really cool. He had issues. How many people know the story of Samson? Know that he had issues. And he's a bit stupid. He had issues. If God can use Samson, he can use me. Turn to the person next to you and say, if God can use Samson, he can use you. But you see, Samson had issues. And Samson's life started with a promise to his parents. And God promised his parents, for behold, you shall conceive and bear a son. Those razors shall come upon his head, for the child shall be a Nazarite to God from the womb. And he shall begin to deliver Israel out of the hands of the Philistines. He had a destiny and he had a purpose in life. And that purpose and destiny was to begin the deliverance of Israel from the hands of the Philistines, who had oppressed them for years. But he had issues. We all have issues. But the issues were not the start of his downfall. I know that people talk about Samson and had relationship issues. He did. But the bottom line is his downfall did not start with issues, with his issues. You see, Samson's there. We hear that he's born, he's a miracle child, that his mother was barren and God promised him a son. He's born. The next thing we know about him, he's looking for a wife. And he goes down to a place called, he goes down to a town, Timea, sees this hot Philistine girl. Let's talk, come on. We don't know her name. But if you ask me, this girl was hot. Probably named Olga. Well, makes perfect sense to me. And so Samson says to his parents, she's the one. And Dad says, well, can't you find, Dad trying to be very patriotic, religious and all the rest of this, can't we find a good Jewish girl for you? And he says, no, she's the one. She's hot. That was not I actually thought that was the start of his issues, but it's not, because it actually says that it was all part of God's plan. If you read Judges chapter 14 verse 4, it says, it actually tells us that marrying a Philistine girl was actually part of God's plan to bring deliverance. So that was not the issue. His issue hadn't started yet. So he's going down to see his girlfriend, this hot Philistine girl. And a lion comes out to attack. And it says that Samson killed the lion with his bare hands. It was a supernatural deliverance. It says, so Samson went down to Timnah with his father and mother and came to the vineyards of Timnah. Now, to his surprise, a young lion came roaring against him. I want to tell you, the lion roars against us. And the Spirit of the Lord came mightily upon him, and he tore the lion apart, as one would tear a young goat, though he had nothing in his hand. But he did not tell his mother and father what he'd done. So we begin to see the hand of God on Samson's life. He tears this lion apart. That's not the start of his problems. Being betrothed to a Philistine girl was not his problem. Killing this lion was not his problem. But we read in verse 7 of Judges 7 that he went down there again. He went down to talk with the woman, his betrothed. And she well pleased Samson. After some time he returned to get her. He turned aside to see the carcass of the lion. And behold, a swarm of bees and honey were in the carcass of the lion. So he took some of it in his hands and went along eating. When he came to his father and mother, he gave some to them, and they also ate. But he did not tell them that he had taken the honey from the carcass of the lion. That was the start of his issues. Because as a Nazirite, he was not to touch any dead thing. But he was distracted. He's going down to see his girlfriend, his betrothed, his wife-to-be. And as he's going down the road, he's distracted. He remembers, hey, the Spirit of God came upon me, and I killed this lion that went to attack. So he goes across to see his victory. And as he sees the victory, he sees this swarm of bees and honey. So he swoops down and he takes out a handful of the honey and he's going along eating it. He should not have gone near the honey. He should never have gone near the lion, because as a Nazirite, he was not to touch any dead thing. But being distracted, he forgot his destiny. And it actually became the source as you read through, we're not going to go through the whole thing. It was the puzzle that he posed to the Philistines out of the strong something to eat and all this. And, he's talking about this hive of bees that were in the carcass of the lion. I want to tell you that he killed the lion. He killed the lion. He had a great victory. It says the Spirit of God came upon him and he killed the lion. Yet a little bit later, the great success that he had was the source of a distraction that actually began his downfall. As I said, I've been reading Mark's Gospel. And in Mark's Gospel, he tells us parable of the sower. And we know the parable of the sower. The sower goes out to sow seed. Some falls on the wayside, on the path, and the devil comes and immediately snatches the seed. Immediately. Then some seed fell on rocky ground. But because it's full of rocks, it takes no root, and as soon as trouble comes, immediately trouble comes, it just withers because there's no root. He talks about seed falling on good soil. And the good soil produces a crop, 30, 60, 100-fold. I like Luke's Gospel. Cut out the 30 and 60, just give me the 100. But there's another sort of soil. And it says that some of that seed fell among thorns. Now these are the ones that sown among thorns. They are the ones who hear the word, and the cares of the world, the deceitfulness of riches, the desires for other things enter in and choke the word, and it becomes unfruitful. Notice, seed on the path, immediately the devil snatches it away. Immediately it happens. People will hear the gospel and they'll walk out and they go, oh, yeah, whatever. Devil snatched the seed away. Some falls on the rocky ground. And it seems to be going well until trouble comes. And as soon as trouble comes, whoop, seed's gone. It withers and it dies. But the seed that's sown among thorns is different. It says that the life begins to get choked out of it. The seed that falls among the thorns, the cares of this world, it says. That word cares can be translated the distractions of this world. Choke the life. And it begins to choke the life. So it doesn't immediately die, it just kind of gets its life choked out of it. And I want to tell you, the distractions of this world can choke the supernatural kingdom life out of us. And as I was reading John's Gospel, I've come up with about 8 things that will choke the life out of us, and not all of them are bad. Think of Samson. What did Samson do? Samson killed a lion because the Spirit of God came upon him. But that success was what started his downfall when he went over to the lion again and touched the dead animal and scooped out the honey. Jesus' ministry starts in Capernaum. After he's baptized by John, he goes to Capernaum. And he's preaching in the synagogue. And I've been to the synagogue. And Peter's house, if it's the house that they know the synagogue because they've excavated it and found it and all the rest of it. They believe they've found Peter's house. And if what they believe's right, the synagogue would be no bigger than this main auditorium. And Peter's house, believe it or not, would be where the foyer is. It's just over the road. So you go down to Capernaum in Israel and you go into the synagogue, then you walk over a little road, no wider than that little passageway there, and you're in what they believe was Peter's house. So Jesus is in Capernaum. He preaches in the synagogue, goes over to Peter's house for lunch. Peter's mother-in-law is sick with a fever. He heals her. She's healed. Then it says at dusk, that was on the Sabbath, so it's at dusk when the Sabbath is over, the town bring all the sick people in Capernaum to Peter's house. And it says he heals them all. They've just had a revival break out. When you read Mark chapter 1, the first thing, the next morning, very early before anyone else gets up, Jesus goes off to pray. They find him and they say, the whole town's looking for you. Distraction. And Jesus says, no. We've got to go to all the other villages, for that's the purpose that I came, to preach in these other villages. If it was me, I would have set up a revival crusade in Capernaum. Because, hey, it's so perfect. You go to the synagogue in the morning, you pray for all the sick, see them all healed, go over the road to Peter's house, have lunch, come back for the afternoon or the evening meeting, and you just settle. That's what I would have done. To me, it makes sense. But the distraction was the success. And Jesus goes off to pray. And when the disciples come and say, hey, they're all lining up. We have a healing line ready for you. He says, no, we've got to go to other towns and preach in them as well. And so he starts a circuit. Later on in Mark's Gospel, it says he would go on a circuit around these villages around Galilee. So success can be a distraction. Another distraction. Supernatural encounters. can be a distraction. Jesus up on the Mount of Transfiguration takes Peter, James and John with him. And suddenly the glory of God fills the area, and Moses and Elijah appear there and talking to Jesus about what's going to happen. What does Peter say? Peter says, hey, this is brilliant. This is awesome. Let's build 3 tents. One for you, one for Moses, one for Elijah. Let's just settle. No, they had to come down from the mountain. Because what they were talking about was not this supernatural encounter on the hill, but it was about the fact that they were talking about him, about his coming death. And he had to come down off the mountain. So there's a distraction about these supernatural encounters can cause distraction from what God's doing and what God wants to do. It's good for us to be here. Let us make 3 tabernacles, one for you, one for Moses, one for Elijah. If they had have made the tabernacles and stayed on the Mount of Transfiguration, he would never have come off the mountain and gone to the cross. He'd still be on the mountain. Distractions. So success can be a distraction. Supernatural encounters can be distractions. Family can be a distraction. Jesus is ministering in, I think it was in Nazareth, and his mother and his siblings come along. They think he's mad. And they want to just take him home. Take him back home and put him in a padded room somewhere. They think he's gone mad. And his response to that was, whoever does my will. That's my mother, my brothers and my sisters. You see, family can be a distraction. As we head towards Christmas, it's a family time. It's a great time for family. But I want to encourage us, don't be distracted from the main thing. And the main thing is that God so loved the world that he gave his only Son. So as we celebrate Christmas, as we come towards Christmas in only 6 weeks' time, with all the celebration, all the party, all the stuff that we need to do to get ready to celebrate Christmas, don't be distracted from the things that matter. He could have been distracted by rejection. Rejection will cause distraction. In fact, John's Gospel, in the introduction to John's Gospel, he said he came to his own, but his own received him not. In other words, what John is saying is a hallmark of Jesus' ministry was the fact that he was rejected. Isaiah prophesying 500, 600 years earlier said he was despised and rejected. A man of sorrows, acquainted with grief. That could have been a distraction. He could easily have thrown his hands up in the air and said, they've rejected me. I'm going. I'm leaving. So rejection can be a distraction. He could have been distracted by the storms of life. I love the story. I love the fact that he's going he says to the disciples, let's go over to the other side. He goes into the boat, falls asleep. Storm comes. These hardened fishermen are fearing for their lives. Don't you care we're going to drown? He's asleep. Why was Jesus asleep? Because he had confidence in his word over the storm. And so he was just able to sleep through the storm, saying, well, it'll be fine, we'll get there. Because God's given me a word. God's given me a word, we're going to get to the other side. And so, while these hardened fishermen are distracted by the storm and panicking, Jesus is showing the ultimate undistraction. Undistracted attitude. He's asleep on the boat. I want to tell you, if you're having trouble sleeping, one of the things is you're distracted by the stuff that's happening around you, storms around you. Jesus is asleep in the boat. Love it. People, all sorts of reasons people give for Jesus being asleep in the boat. The reality was He knew that he was going to get to the other side because God had given him a word. It didn't matter about the storm. We're going to get to the other side. And so I'm just going to have a rest. I'm going to have a sleep. He could have been distracted by confrontation and disputes. They came and they said, why are you doing this on the Sabbath? Why are you healing people on the day of rest? And he says, my Father is working and so am I. He wasn't going to be distracted by this, you're healing on the Sabbath. What are you doing? Healing on the Sabbath. No, he said, my Father's working and so am I. He refused to be distracted by religious dogma. As I was reading through that, the Mark chapter 1, I noticed it specifically says that after dusk, they brought all the sick. They knew that you're not supposed to heal on the Sabbath. They waited till the Sabbath was over, and as soon as it was over, they brought all the sick. But Jesus later on makes the point that I'll heal on the Sabbath as well. But he refused to be distracted by all that. He could have been distracted by advice, good advice. Why do you actually speak in parables? No one understands what you're saying. So why do you do that? Good advice from his disciples. But he said, this is to fulfill what Isaiah said about me. Hearing, they're not going to hear. Seeing, they're not going to see. And so he refused to be distracted by good advice. So distractions are not all evil. Distractions are just distractions. Of course, he could have been distracted. The devil tried to distract him. If you're the Son of God, turn these stones into bread. Pass. Man shall not live by bread alone. Hey, if you're the Son of God, throw yourself off the pinnacle of the temple. The angels are going to come and they're going to bear you up, and wow, that'll be they'll write about that. If you want to show yourself to be the Son of God, here's the best way to do it. Throw yourself off the temple, and people are going to see the angels come, and they're going to bear you down, and you're not going to hurt yourself. No, pass. Man, don't put the Lord God to the test. Well, these are all mine. Kingdoms have been given to me, I'll give them to whoever I want. Bow down, worship me, they're yours. Pass. You shall worship the Lord God alone. You see, they were distractions. They were designed to put Jesus off task. So how do we deal with distractions? It's all right to list a whole lot of things that will distract us, but how do we deal with it? How do we stay focused? How do we stay undistracted? I don't know if that's a word. I've just invented it. Well, there's a wonderful story in Luke chapter 10. Now it happened as they went, he entered a certain village, and a certain woman named Martha welcomed him into her house. She had a sister called Mary, who also sat at Jesus' feet and heard his word. But Martha was distracted with much serving. And she approached him and said, Lord, you don't care that my sister has left me to serve alone? Left me to do everything. I've got to make the sandwiches and then I've got to wash the dishes afterwards. While Mary just sits there. You tell her to get out and help. And Jesus said, Martha, Martha, you are worried and troubled about everything. And then says that Mary has chosen the best, and that's not going to be taken away from her. You see, Martha was easily distracted because she was occupying her time with stuff that didn't really matter. She was making sandwiches that had never been requested. You see, looking busy doesn't equate to spirituality. Sometimes we think we just got to be busy. If we're just busy, that'll show that we are really spiritual. No, it's often the other way around. Busyness is just trying to look spiritual. Mary certainly did not look busy, but she was doing the most important thing. She was doing the most important thing. She was sitting at the feet of Jesus. The most important thing, I shared this 2 weeks ago. The most important thing as believers that we can do is just spend time in God's presence. All the other stuff is secondary. Listen to this. Psalm 27. One thing have I desired of the Lord, that will I seek. So David's saying, of all the things that I could be doing, that I could busy my life with, that I could fill my calendar up with, of all the things that I could put on my to-do list, one thing I've desired and one thing that I'm going to seek, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life. To behold the beauty of the Lord and to inquire in His temple. So he's actually saying that as the King of Israel, there's plenty of things he could be doing. He says, but there's only one thing that really matters. There's only one thing. In the end of the day, there's only one thing that really matters. That's to be in the presence of God. Then he goes on and says, for. F-O-R. What is that there for? It's there because it's connecting to the other. You see, David's saying, one thing matters. In the whole scheme of things, there really is only one thing that matters. And that's to be in God's presence. And now he says why that's important. For in the time of trouble, He shall hide me in His pavilion. So what he's saying is, there's really, despite all the stuff that can happen around me and be going on around me, if I find myself in the presence of God, undistracted, all the other stuff will take care of itself. Why? Because God is on my side. For in the time of trouble He shall hide me in His pavilion. In the secret place of His tabernacle He shall hide me. He shall set my feet upon a rock. We kind of take things, grab that little section and say, God's going to put me on the rock. My feet will be on the rock. He's going to hide me in the secret place. We take that verse and we say, God's going to protect me. But why is He going to protect me? Because I position myself to be protected. Because one thing I've desired, and one thing I'm going to seek after, that I will be found in the presence of God. The Bible talks about he that abides under the shadow of the Almighty. What does that mean? What does that mean? It doesn't mean God's huge. Well, God is huge, but it does. The context is not God is huge, therefore it doesn't matter where I am, I'm going to be abiding under His shadow. It's talking about the Ark of the Covenant and the cherubim and the wings of the cherubim. The Ark of the Covenant was a box that was probably not much bigger than that. And on top of the box was these cherubim with outstretched wings. And the context and the point that's being made is that the glory of God, the light of God would shine down upon the Ark of the Covenant, and the wings of the cherubim would cast a shadow. But who knows that a box that size, with cherubim on top, with the light coming straight down, is not going to cast a very big shadow. To be under the shadow of the Almighty, under the shadow of that's cast by the wings of these cherubim on the Ark of the Covenant. Guess what? You've got to be close to the Ark. And what's the Ark? The Ark is a symbol of God's presence. So he that abides under the shadow of the Almighty needs to be very, very close to the presence. One thing have I desired, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life. You know, we cannot avoid distractions. They come. We got one straight after the service. We got to fulfill certain legal requirements as an incorporated body. It's a distraction. Distractions will come. It's how we deal with those distractions. And not allowing the distractions to become the main thing. Jesus was often interrupted, but he never allowed it to distract him from his purpose. Never allowed it to distract him from his calling. Right at the end of his life, he's in Gethsemane. And there was a powerful distraction came his way. And Jesus prayed and said, if it's at all possible, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not my will, but yours be done. Church, Jesus dealt with distractions. And he dealt with distractions because he knew his call. He could easily have set up a revival meeting in Capernaum and just had a tent meeting. But he didn't, because he said, no, I've got to go and preach I've got to go around all the other villages around. He did it in the circuit. He could easily have been distracted by Peter's advice. Let's build 3 tabernacles. One for you, one for Moses, one for Elijah, and let's just have a ball. Let's just have a party. He said, no, there's something waiting at the bottom of the mountain. For this purpose I have come. He didn't allow the distractions to distract. Every person in this room has a unique call and a unique gift on your life. Every person has a gift and a calling on your life. And it's different from the person sitting next to you. It's different. And that's why we call ourselves the body. That's why Paul used the analogy of the human body when he's talking about the church. And he says, if all was an eye, where would be the hearing? If all were ears, where would be the seeing? Oh, but I'm not really that important. Well, that's not necessarily true. That's not true. However, if you believe that, if you believe that you're not that important, guess what? I've got some really good news for you. You want some good news? If you're feeling that you're not that significant and that important in the whole scheme of things, you're not up the front preaching, you're not up the front praying and leading worship, you're not doing those things, you feel like you just sit there in church and no one really notices you, I've got some really good news for you. You want to know what it is? God said you get greater honor. Because we give greater, in 1 Corinthians 12 it talks about the least important have greater honor. So be encouraged. If you're feeling as if you're not that significant, that important, guess what? God said you have greater honor. I'm just the appendix. And we can have our appendix out if they burst. You know, they've found out that the appendix actually serve a purpose. They're not just there for the fun of it. They actually serve a purpose. Now, we adapt after having our appendix out to life without the appendix, but it actually serves a purpose. Every part of our body serves a purpose. Every person in this auditorium serves a purpose. Every person that calls Gippsland Christian Church their home church is part of the body and has a purpose and a destiny on their life. I could be distracted by wanting to do stuff that I can't do well. But I've made a choice. I'm going to do the things that God's put on my life to do. I want to deal with the distraction. I'm learning to do it better, but I want to deal with the distractions so as I can do the things that God's called me to do well. Don't be distracted. The whole body working together fulfills a purpose. Fulfills a purpose. Distractions come. It's how we deal with them. Amen?